Alma Powell is the co-chair of America's Promise, an alliance of national organizations dedicated to teaching today's youth. But I want to go back a little bit. You were born in Birmingham, and I understand that your first job was as a radio host, and you did a show called Lunchtime with Alma.
That's right, on WJLD.
You've been in the media for a long time.
For a long time.
When you're married to a four-star general and former Secretary of State, does that mean you're expected to become a public figure as well?
Not necessarily. I think I've always been in the public eye as the wife often of a senior officer. Most of them are in the public eye. This particular time of it being in the public eye is of my own choosing.
Why children? You are a staunch advocate of children.
Yes. Well, I believe strongly that to whom much is given, much is expected. My husband and I have been so fortunate in our lives. We met each other. We've been married now for 50 years. We have raised 3 children who are busy giving back to society, profitable, educated, and giving back. And we have the sheer joy of nurturing the newest generation of Powell offspring.
When did your advocacy begin?
Well, I'm with America's Promise. It began about 15 years ago, but I have always been part of advocating for children in one way or another. It's in my DNA. It was what my own parents did and their parents before them.
You are an audiologist by trade.
I am an audiologist by trade.
Why did you choose that?
Well, I found it very interesting. I had been a speech and drama major in college. There's no way to make a living doing that, although I have a daughter now who is an actress. And when I went to study in graduate school, I liked speech pathology, but I liked audiology better. It had a medical side to it that therapy doesn't have, pathology doesn't have. It was much more interesting to know the intricacies of the hearing mechanism and to be able to help people who had hearing problems adapt.
Is that something you've carried on into your present?
No. I have not worked in many years.
Well, tell us about America's Promise, the alliance work. How you have 400 some institutions or entities?
We have over 400 partners, and these partners are all people who are working for the welfare of children. United Way, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Association of Governors and Mayors, all who are concerned about giving our young people the supports that they need for success.
One of the things that brings you to Jackson, Mississippi is Operation Shoestring, and they were a recipient.
They were a recipient of a grant from ours. We have been able, through raising funds from interested individuals, to give grants where it is possible. Some of the first that we gave were following the hurricanes, and we had a program called Katrina's Kids, where we gave grants to communities in New Orleans and in Houston that had been badly impacted by the storm. And because we were so concerned about the children who had been the victims of those storms, they had to have some continuity in their lives and some activities in their lives to see them through the great trauma that they had experienced.
You wrote 2 children's books based on America's Promise. The first one is called America's Promise, right? And the second, My Little Red Wagon, which is sort of a sequel or an accompanying piece to that?
My Little Red Wagon is a little board book for preschoolers, and it talks about the story of the symbol of America's Promise, which is the little red wagon, as a symbol of childhood. It gives children a vehicle for pulling around their toys, their little sister, their hopes, their dreams, but also their disappointments and rejections. But it has a long gray handle on it so that when the load is too heavy, an adult can lean down and help carry the load. And that is the purpose of the Red Wagon. And so My Little Wagon was for preschoolers. It's a board book, and it shows a little boy using his wagon for all different things, but there is his father who's always there to help carry the load.
The purpose of that book and America's Promise, the other book, are they to help? It's all about advocacy for children, but these are children themselves who will read this. So is this a way to empower them, to have them take ownership of their own lives?
No, these books actually explain what America's Promise is all about. And the one that's called America's Promise illustrates all 5 of the promises, and it helps kids understand what those promises mean. The caring adult, the safe place to learn and grow after school, the healthy start, the marketable skill through an effective education, and then the opportunity to give back to society.
When you come into a state like Mississippi that struggles with poverty, with education, with kids not having enough to eat, I mean, there are so many challenges. How do you prioritize? How do you come into a state like this and prioritize and say, if we can address this issue, we might be able to get to the root of the other issues?
Well, you've got some wonderful people here in Mississippi who are willing to address those challenges and in community work to pull a community together to provide those supports. We don't have to drive the program. They take it and run.
Then what do you were telling me before we started that this is like preaching to the choir, because these are people who are advocates doing the same thing that you're doing.
That's exactly right. Operation Shoestring is America's Promise in a nutshell. They provide all of those things. This is what America's Promise is about. And our idea is to spread this through all the country until it is ingrained in our psyche that these are the things that we have to do for our young people. When I talked to them today, it was not so much about what they are doing, but it was to give them an idea of what works in other places, what things are being done and what things work.
Can you give us an example of what has worked in other places?
Oh, we've got a litany of things. I could stay here for 2 hours telling you. We run a competition every year called the 100 Best Communities for Children. And we are now in, I think, the 6th year of that. Some communities have won every single year. And what it does is encourage communities to show us how you are providing for your children, how you are supplying the 5 promises in your community by bringing together all aspects of the community, the business community, the faith community, the schools, the parents, all working together to administer these 5 promises. And since we have developed the program of the aim of cutting the high school dropout rate in half in recent years, they have to show how they are working on that in their community. And the stories are endless, and they are so exciting, the things that people are doing. And so every year, once a year, we do a summit where we bring people together from all over the country so they can share these ideas. This is what works in our community. This is what worked in ours. Now, when we say a community is one of the 100 best, it does not mean that this is a community without problems. Problems certainly exist. Somebody said Baltimore. Baltimore, it's a terrible place, but they have programs that they are working on for their young people. And that's what we want to raise up for other people to see. And it encourages other communities. We had one community in West Virginia that had won for 3 years in a row, and they said, okay, we've won 3 years in a row, but now we're going to go to the next county and help them do it. It is a force multiplier. We had a newspaperman in North Texas who read about a community that had won the 100 Best competition, and his editorial is, why can't we do this too? And so it gets people in the community mobilized and working around the 5 promises.
I know that you really encourage volunteer service.
Volunteerism has to be a part of it. We have many institutions that address these problems, but it takes all of us, and not necessarily being paid to do it. With mentors, for example, all of those wonderful organizations that exist under the National Corporation for Community Service that provide, they in many places deliver our programs into the community. AmeriCorps volunteers, Experience Corps with people from AARP, all of these work together to deliver these programs that we endorse.
So it sounds like, in conclusion, that you see all of these different entities in a community coming together, and that all of those entities are required in order to help a child succeed?
Definitely. Children who have 5 promises, pardon me, are going to be successful.
That's nice to hear, and it was very nice to speak with you, Mrs. Alma Powell. Thank you very much.
Thank you for asking me.